Red Bull just lost over 1 full second per lap, and the reason is so serious, it could change the future of the entire team. Because this isn't just a bad car. This is a chassis failure. A design so flawed, it turned the most dominant team in Formula 1 into one of the slowest on the grid. Max Verstappen called it impossible to drive. A rookie from their own junior team eliminated him in qualifying. And behind all of it, there's a controversial decision made at the very core of the RB22 that engineers inside Red Bull are now questioning. This is not a performance drop. This is a full technical crisis. And what you're about to hear reveals how one single direction may have triggered the collapse of an entire era. At first, Red Bull didn't call it a crisis. They couldn't. Because what they were seeing didn't make sense. The RB22 wasn't just slightly off. It was fundamentally wrong. But in those first moments, the team treated it like a normal problem. Setup, balance, fine-tuning. The kind of issues they had solved 100 times before. Because that's what dominant teams do. They adjust, and they come back stronger. But this time, nothing worked. Session after session, the same pattern repeated. The car looked nervous, unstable, losing time in places where it should have been strongest. And no matter what they changed, the lap time didn't return. That's when the first real doubt appeared. Because engineers started comparing something very specific. What they expected, versus what they were seeing. And the gap between those two was massive. Because according to their models, the RB22 should have been competitive. Not dominant, but close. Instead, it was over 1 second off the pace. And that's the moment everything shifts inside a Formula 1 team. Because when reality doesn't match expectation, you don't just question performance. You question the entire design. And that's exactly what started happening. Because the more they analyzed the data, the clearer it became. This wasn't a setup issue. It wasn't a small mistake. It was something much deeper. The chassis itself was wrong. Not in one area. Everywhere. Too heavy. Poorly balanced. Aerodynamically inconsistent. A car that behaves differently depending on speed. Understeer in slow corners. Sudden oversteer in fast ones. A balance window so narrow, it practically doesn't exist. And that's what makes it so difficult to fix. Because you're not adjusting a problem. You're fighting the nature of the car. And that's exactly what Verstappen was dealing with. Lap after lap. Trying to extract performance from something that doesn't respond the same way twice. And when a driver like him says it's impossible to drive, that's not frustration. That's diagnosis. Because at that level, drivers feel what engineers can't always see. And what he felt was a car with no consistency, no trust, no predictability. And without that, performance disappears. But here's where the situation becomes even more serious. Because this wasn't supposed to happen. This was the first Red Bull car fully built under Pierre Waché's leadership. The first real project without Adrian Newey defining the concept. And that changes everything. Because for years, Red Bull wasn't just fast. They were precise. Every design decision had clarity. Every concept had purpose. Now, that clarity is gone. Because the RB22 wasn't just built differently. It was built on assumptions that didn't hold up. Weight distribution that compromised balance. Aerodynamic behavior that didn't match expectations. And a chassis that forced the team into constant correction instead of progression. And that's where the controversy begins. Because inside the team, there isn't full agreement. Some believe the issue comes from the wind tunnel. That the data misled the entire design. Others believe the problem is more direct. That the concept itself was wrong from the start. And that division is what turns a problem into a crisis. Because now, it's not just about fixing the car. It's about deciding who was right. And more importantly, who was responsible? And in Formula 1, that question never stays unanswered for long. And this is where the situation turns from a technical problem into a full-blown internal crisis. Because once a team starts questioning the concept, the next step is inevitable. They start questioning the people behind it. And inside Red Bull, that moment has already arrived. Because this isn't just any project. This is the first car built without Adrian Newey leading the design. The man who defined their dominance. The man who created the foundation of everything they became. And now, for the first time, that foundation is gone. Which means the RB22 is not just a car. It's a test of Pierre Waché, of his vision, of his ability to lead without Newey guiding the direction. And right now, that test is going in the worst possible direction. Because when a car fails this clearly, responsibility becomes impossible to avoid. And that's exactly what's happening behind closed doors. Quietly, but intensely. Because the technical team is divided. Not slightly. Fundamentally. One side believes the tools failed. That the wind tunnel misled the entire project. That the data created a car that was never going to work. But the other side believes something far more serious. That the design decisions themselves were wrong. That even with perfect data, the concept would still have failed. And that difference changes everything. Because if it's the tools, you fix the system. If it's the concept, you question the leadership. And that's why this situation is so dangerous. Because Red Bull doesn't just need a faster car. They need clarity. They need to know what went wrong. And right now, they don't have that answer. Even Helmut Marko admitted it. They don't fully understand what's failing. And in Formula One, that's the worst position you can be in. Because if you don't understand the problem, you can't fix it. You can only react, guess, take risks, and hope something works. But hope is not a strategy. Not at this level. Not in a sport where milliseconds decide everything. And while Red Bull is dealing with uncertainty, their rivals are doing the opposite. They are building on clarity, improving systems they trust, developing cars they understand. Which means every race, the gap doesn't just stay. It grows. And that's what makes this moment so critical. Because now, every decision Red Bull makes carries more weight than ever. Do they continue with this concept and try to fix it? Or do they accept something much harder? That the RB22 cannot be fully saved this season? And that question leads to something even bigger. Because if the car cannot be saved, then the focus shifts from performance to accountability, from development to decisions, about roles, about structure, about leadership. Because Formula One doesn't tolerate uncertainty for long. It demands answers. And when those answers don't come, changes follow. And that's why this story is no longer just about a car. It's about a team at a turning point. A team that went from total control to total confusion in just a few races. And now has to decide, not just how to fix the RB22, but how to rebuild the system behind it. Because if they get that decision wrong, this won't just be a bad season. It will be the moment their dominance truly ended. And this is where the situation reaches its most dangerous point. Because once a team loses clarity, it starts losing time. Not just lap time, development time, decision time, time they can never get back. And that's exactly what's happening to Red Bull right now. Because while they're trying to understand the RB22, their rivals are moving forward. Every race, every upgrade, every session, building momentum. While Red Bull is still asking the same question. Why is the car like this? And that delay is what turns a problem into a collapse. Because in Formula One, you don't stand still. If you're not improving, you're falling behind. And right now, Red Bull is doing both. Trying to fix the present, while losing the future. Because here's the part nobody is saying out loud. Even if they fix the RB22, even if they recover half a second, that doesn't bring them back to the front. It just makes them competitive again. But not dominant. And that's a completely different position. Because for years, Red Bull controlled the grid. They dictated the pace. They forced others to react. Now, they are the ones reacting. And that shift is massive. Because once a team loses that control, it changes everything. Strategy, confidence, decision-making, even how drivers approach a race weekend. And you can already see it. Verstappen is no longer attacking. He's managing, adapting, trying to survive with a car that doesn't give him confidence. And that affects performance more than any technical issue. Because when the driver stops trusting the car, the limit disappears. And without the limit, you're no longer competing at the highest level. But here's the real consequence. The one that connects everything. Because this isn't just about losing performance. It's about losing belief. Inside the team. Inside the garage. Inside the factory. Because when engineers stop trusting the tools, when drivers stop trusting the car, and when leadership is being questioned, the entire structure becomes unstable. And that's when mistakes multiply. Because now, every decision carries doubt. Every upgrade carries risk. Every result carries pressure. And that's exactly where Red Bull is right now. Not just behind, but unstable. And in Formula One, that's even more dangerous than being slow. Because speed can be found, but stability has to be rebuilt. And that takes time. Time they don't have. Because the season is moving forward. The championship is already taking shape. And every race locks the gap even further. So now, everything comes down to one final reality. Red Bull is no longer fighting for dominance. They're fighting for control. Control of the car. control of the development, control of the direction. And if they don't regain that, then this isn't just a temporary crisis. It's the moment that defines the end of an era. Because in Formula One, dominance doesn't disappear slowly. It breaks. Suddenly. And when it does, the teams that survive are the ones that understand why. Right now, Red Bull doesn't. And until they do, this crisis is only going to get worse. And this is where the final layer of the crisis becomes impossible to ignore. Because when everything starts to break at once, the problem is no longer technical. It becomes structural. Because now, Red Bull is not just dealing with a slow car. They're dealing with a system that no longer works. A wind tunnel that doesn't correlate. A chassis that doesn't behave as expected. A development process that cannot guarantee results. And a leadership structure under pressure. All at the same time. And that combination is what ends eras in Formula One. Not one mistake. Not one bad race. But multiple failures stacking on top of each other. Until the team can't respond fast enough. And that's exactly what this looks like. Because think about it. The RB22 is overweight. That alone explains a huge part of the 1 second deficit. The balance is broken, which makes the car unpredictable. The correlation is off, which makes development unreliable. And the concept is being questioned internally, which slows every decision. All of it connected. All of it pointing in the same direction. This wasn't one failure. This was a chain reaction. And it all started at the core of the car. The chassis. The foundation everything else depends on. Because if the foundation is wrong, everything built on top of it suffers. Aerodynamics, weight distribution, cooling systems, even driver confidence. And that's exactly what we're seeing. Because Verstappen is not just struggling with speed. He's struggling with trust. Trust in the rear end. Trust in the balance. Trust that the car will do the same thing every lap. And without that, even the best driver in the world becomes limited. But here's the part that changes everything. This isn't something you fix quickly. Because you can upgrade parts. You can reduce weight. You can adjust balance. But you cannot fully redesign a chassis mid-season. And that means Red Bull is trapped. They can improve the car, but they cannot completely fix it. Not this year. And that's the moment a team has to make the hardest decision of all. Do you keep investing in a flawed project? Or do you accept the loss and start preparing for the next one? Because every upgrade on the RB22 costs time, costs resources, costs focus. Resources that could be used to build the next car. The one that actually matters. And that's where the internal tension grows even more. Because now the question isn't just technical. It's strategic. Do they fight to recover this season? Or sacrifice it to rebuild properly? And that decision will define everything that comes next. Because if they choose to keep fighting, they risk falling further behind long term. But if they give up too early, they lose the present completely. And in Formula One, both choices are dangerous. But one of them is inevitable. Because the truth is simple. You cannot win a championship with a car you don't understand. And right now, Red Bull doesn't fully understand the RB22. And until they do, no upgrade, no setup change, no driver performance will be enough. Because this isn't about finding speed anymore. It's about rebuilding control. Control of the car. Control of the data. Control of the direction. And until that control comes back, Red Bull will remain exactly where they are now. Not just behind, but lost. And in Formula One, being lost is the one thing no dominant team can afford. Because once you lose your way, getting back to the top is harder than getting there in the first place.